So this is all right. Let's cover this article. This is an article. It's called "The Dark Side of Chess," and it's called "Payoffs, Points, and 12-Year-Old Grandmasters." Whoa, this looks pretty serious. Okay, very ominous tone at the start of the article. All right, let's read it. All right, actually, I think here I can probably make it a little bit bigger since the article is just okay. Okay. Let's just whatever. I'll just leave it as is. Doesn't matter. All right. Kiev, Ukraine. Sergei Karyakin had only one game of chess left, and he had to win it. It should have been an easy task. The opponent was the lowest ranked player in the tournament. Karyakin was one of the rising talents in chess, a poised and accomplished boy of 12 years, 7 months, who was at the moment one victory from becoming the game's youngest grandmaster. The title, the title would change his life. In chess, only the top 30 players can expect to build a proper career from the game. Becoming the youngest grandmaster in history offered Karyakin a direct path to that world, a door to global acclaim and corporate sponsorships, and invitations to the biggest tournaments, to the life that he and every prodigy, and perhaps most of all, their parents dream about. But first, Karyakin had to win one last game. For once, though, his skill did not appear to be enough. For nearly 60 moves, Karyakin posed subtle and challenging problems to Irina Semyonova, his opponent. Each time she had an answer, a counter. Karyakin kept pressing, but the game ended in a draw. Suddenly, all of what had been close enough to touch, the label, the fame, the history, was slipping away. But the aspiring grandmaster and his team still had one audacious move left. Fathers, sons, and points. All right. This looks like IRL chess in Kiev, Ukraine. Very nice. All right. Chess grandmasters are not made in a day. Even the brightest talents need years to earn the highest and most coveted title in the game. To achieve it, a player must gain a high rating through strong tournament play and by collecting a series of benchmarks called norms in games at qualified events. For 3 decades after the title was formally introduced in 1950, the Grandmaster was a rare species. Other players knew not only their names, but their playing styles too. They were treated like stars at tournaments and appearances. That all changed in 1980. In the 1980s, when FIDE, the governing body for chess, started expanding into countries that did not have established chess cultures. To pursue its goal of having at least one grandmaster in each country, FIDE relaxed its requirements. That change made the label more accessible, but also less exclusive. Nearly 2,000 players have become grandmasters since 1950. Gradually, the label ceased being a ticket to a great future in chess. Young players and their often obsessive parents needed something to set them apart. The title of the youngest grandmaster turned into one such springboard. For Karyakin and his father Alexander, the label held almost infinite promise. By becoming the youngest grandmaster, Karyakin would, in an instant, assume a title once held by Boris Spassky and Bobby Fischer, one that even world champions like Garry Kasparov and Magnus Carlsen had never earned. The achievement would make the 12-year-old Sergei Karyakin a household name in chess. It would open doors. Wow, okay. Karyakin had worked his whole life towards this goal. Born in Simferopol, Crimea in 1990, he was playing chess for 6 hours every day by the time he was 5 years old. Through talent and devotion, he quickly developed into one of the most promising young players in Ukraine. Just to be clear, you guys, as I've said before, when people are like, can I start at 20 and become really good? Think about someone like Karyakin, who started at 5 years old and he was playing 6 hours a day at 5. So just to show you how much hard work is required to become a grandmaster and so forth. By the way, can you guys actually see the font or not? If you can't, I can make it a little bit bigger, I suppose. Do you want me to make it a little bit bigger? Can you guys actually see it or not? Okay, one second. Let me cut it down just a little bit. Let's see if this is better. I think this is a little bit better. Okay, there we go. All right. Okay. Okay. The Momot Chess Club, the country's most prestigious chess school at the time, took notice. It invited Karyakin to join its rank in the town of Kramatorsk, a rusty industrial wreck in Ukraine's east. With little to keep them in Crimea, Karyakin's parents had become street vendors to make ends meet in the ruins of the post-Soviet Union economy. The entire family moved with his chess-playing son. Wow. That's pretty amazing. Just street vendors. I mean, just street vendors to make a living. Wow. All right, so this is a picture, a young chess player looking at scores and tournament standings at a tournament in Ukraine. All right, let's keep going. For the Karyakins, the Momot Chess Club was an island of opportunity in a country terrorized by economic transformation and gang wars. By the time they arrived with Sergei, it had started producing champions and grandmasters at the speed of an assembly line. At one point, Momot counted 3 of the 10 youngest grandmasters in the world among its members. Ruslan Ponomaryov, the club's first star, was the world knockout champion from 2002 to 2004. Karyakin quickly rose to become one of the stars of the school. His success and the strong bonds his father was forging with coaches meant Karyakin got the school's backing in tournaments. Those appearances and his success propelled his preteen reputation. Imagine all the parents who give up everything for their kid's dream only for the dream to be chess. I guess you're trying to be funny, Shay Doc, but it is something that happens. This story, I think, is very it's very realistic. There are a lot of parents where, in order to have their children travel or have the opportunities, it costs a lot of money. Chess is not cheap. It's very easy to learn the game at the basic level, but to play tournaments, to keep improving and going through all the stages, lessons, tournaments, I mean, food even. I just mean you go to tournaments, you have to pay for food as well. Like the expenses add up. So it is no joke. All right. But for some players, securing a prestigious title meant more than just playing well. It is an open secret in chess that many players cut side deals with tournament organizers and other top competitors that help them achieve norms they might have struggled to get legitimately. All right. Okay, this is pretty spicy. This is the first part where I'm going to say that this is a pretty unfair thing to write. There certainly are places where that happens for sure. Like, I can talk about my own experiences. Like when I played in Hungary, I think it was 2000 and I want to say it was 2002 or 2000. Maybe it was 2001 or 2002. I went to Hungary to try and make norms because, as I've said before, there were not many norm tournaments in the United States at the time. So I went there, and what happened is I remember there were a couple of games that I played, and there were not games, sorry, but I was noticing throughout the tournament there were a couple of players who they would basically show up for 10 minutes and they would be gone with a draw every game. And what I learned is there was one player, I won't say his name, who I played. Of course I beat the guy because my mom wasn't gonna give him money or any of that nonsense. But there was one player who he'd be out of the room within 10 minutes every day. And so like the way it worked is basically it'd be like, okay, well, if you need a draw, you give me X amount of money. If you need to win, well, it costs like even more money. So it did exist in Hungary to some degree, but what I would say is that from my own personal experiences and what I've seen in chess, most of the time it involves competitors. It doesn't involve the organizers. So I think this is a little bit unfair to sort of make this blanket statement, because while I think there are deals made between players, I don't think it involves the organizers in most of the cases. All right. So it's an open secret in chess that many players cut side deals with tournament organizers and other top competitors that help them achieve norms they might have struggled to get legitimately. All right, let's keep going. But there were other more subtle ways to succeed too. Far from prying eyes, secret agreements and cash exchange to arrange results were not uncommon, according to interviews with chess players and FIDE officials. In a sport so wholly obsessed with status, title, and rank, even selling a game could be accomplished for the right price. This is unfortunate, but I skipped a line. What did I skip? I skipped a line. Sorry. The culture touched the Momot Chess Club. Many of its members acquired their grandmaster credentials in Crimea at tournaments in places like Sudak and Alushta that were known as norm factories, where for as little as $1,000, organizers would make sure players accumulated enough points for a norm. But there were other more subtle ways to succeed too. Far from prying eyes, secret agreements and cash exchange to arrange results were not uncommon, according to interviews with chess players and FIDE officials. In a sport so wholly obsessed with status, title, and rank, even selling a game could be accomplished for the right price. Mikhail Zaitsev, who achieved the rank of international master and is now a chess coach, estimated that of the world's roughly 1,900 living grandmasters, at least 10% have cheated one way or another to acquire the title. Let me think about that for a second. So he's basically saying out of 1,900 people, he's saying that basically 190 have cheated. 100. He's basically saying 190 have cheated to get the title. Trying to think about that. Do I believe that? Do I believe that? I'm just trying to think. I'm trying to think for a second. If I think about it logically, I think it's lower than 10%. I think it's less than 10%, but I do think it's substantial. I would say it's somewhere in between 5 and 10%. I would say it's somewhere between 5 and 10% where there are deals made regarding getting norms. That's what I would say. I think it's somewhere between. I would probably put it like 7.5. I'd put it between 5 and 10%. That's what I would say. So okay, Shohra Bayat, one of the leading arbiters in chess, describes such arrangements in the plainest terms. Match fixing, she said, is cheating. Some hopefuls didn't even have to play a game of chess to get the points they needed. Some tournaments, she said, took place only on paper. Now that's a far more serious accusation. And again, this one I think is actually to some degree is provable that there are certain tournaments which have never been played. And I could go much further down the rabbit hole on this, but I won't for right now, just because I don't want this to get too scandalous. But this is true. 100% there have been tournaments where there have been no games played. None of this is lost on the sport's frustrated leaders. We have a dog called Pasquale, said Nigel Short, the vice president of FIDE. I believe it is possible that if I went to the effort, I think I could get my dog a grandmaster title. All right, now the thing here that I would say that's also kind of questionable about this, and now I'm going to have to go down the scandalous path because of course FIDE acts as though nothing has ever gone wrong. There was a former vice president of FIDE who his rating mysteriously went from something like, I want to say 2625 to close to 2700 level, and he had some amazing scores in various tournaments. And I do believe that these tournaments it's very questionable in terms of what happened. So I'm gonna leave. It was not Nigel. No, it was not Nigel. It was a former FIDE vice president, and everybody knows who it was without me even saying the name. So that's what I would say about this. Then when it says like it's lost on the sports frustrated leaders, there's a former leader who was involved with FIDE in a very serious way who got his rating up. He had some amazing results. Okay. So yeah, everybody knows who I'm referring to. Like half the chat has already said his name. But anyway, let's keep going. So this is ridiculous that like in this article they basically try to act like FIDE has no knowledge of this at all. Like it's lost on the sports as frustrated leaders. Like just very questionable. All right. Okay, let's keep going. Games sold. All right. This is a picture Ukrainian team championship in Lviv, Ukraine. Keep going. The Great Silk Road Tournament, where Karyakin became the world's youngest grandmaster in 2002, was held in the picturesque town of Sudak on the Black Sea. It was a mess, according to interviews with 5 people who were there. The winner was Vasily Malinin. How he won was another matter. Alexander Arashenko, a young player at the time, said Malinin paid Arashenko's mother in exchange for a victory in their match. Another player, Nazar Furman, said he was also paid. Now, one thing that's crazy about this is that actually 2 of these players I've actually played against. I have played against Arashenko. I know him very well. He was a junior player. He was playing a lot in the World Youth around the time I was. He's also played in Gibraltar many years. Nazar Furman, another player I've played here in the United States a couple of times. So it's kind of crazy to see some of these names of people who I actually know. All right, let's keep going. Malinin, who died in November, always denied paying for results. But in a letter published in Russian on an obscure chess website, he acknowledged playing an unusual role in the Sudak tournament. The most notable game, he said, was one he agreed to lose. Malinin told the story this way in his letter. With Karyakin's title as the world's youngest grandmaster slipping away after his unexpected draw with Semyonova, Karyakin's father, Alexander, approached several players to whom his son had lost points and offered them money to replay their games. Furman said he was among those to receive a cash offer for an arranged draw. Malinin, who had points to spare, agreed to replay his game with Karyakin. He said he did so for free and therefore did not consider it cheating. The 2 replayed a game that normally would have taken up to 6 hours. In the replay, Malinin said it was played in Blitz, a high-speed variant of chess. Karyakin won. All right. Minutes later, the newly crowned grandmaster ran into the tournament's main hall, radiant and proud as a peacock, according to Arashenko, who was present. Proud as a peacock. This is pretty spicy. This is some good. This is some good. This is some good content. Wow. What can I say? This is good. Asked about the episode in an interview with the New York Times, Karyakin said he would ask his father about it. He later said that he is not in touch with his father and had no further information about the tournament. Phone calls and text messages sent to Karyakin's parents were not answered. The fruits of Karyakin's victory, though, came quickly. The next year, he played at the tournament in Vikonsdij in the Netherlands, a town known as the Wimbledon of chess. In Paris, he joined the prestigious NAO Chess Club. Only a few months earlier, Karyakin had traveled to tournaments in Europe by bus. Now, as the world's youngest grandmaster, he is greeted by the president of Mexico. I was just swarmed with invitations, Karyakin said in an interview talking about the aftermath. I became widely popular. All right, and I would also add, this is very true. Are the players in this article still active? Well, Sergey, of course, is active. Arashenko is still active. He's a strong grandmaster from Ukraine. Furman, I'm not sure about, but he also very, very strong player. So as I was saying, though, one thing that's very true is that when your name gets out there as a junior and you have these opportunities, you will get these invitations to tournaments that you would not otherwise get. That's very important to note. Like, I'll give you a good example. So if you look at a player like Andrei Esipenko, very, very good example. He is now 17, 18 years old. He's starting to rise through the ranks. He beat Magnus and Vikonsdij. He got this invitation. Now, based on that invitation, his result in that tournament, it's very likely that that he's going to keep getting invitations and have a chance to prove himself. But say, for example, you look at Russia, just to use this, there probably are, I'm betting, like 5 or 6 other players from Russia who on paper at least look like better invitations. Say, Grishchuk, Dubov, Artemiev, Kramnik, Karyakin. I mean, the list goes on and on. So a lot of it comes down to who gets the invitations. And when your name is out there in this kind of way, it makes a big difference. Vidyugov is another example also. Yeah. So when your name is out there, it really makes a big difference. All right, let's keep going. Competing against the world's best players, Karyakin progressed rapidly. By October 2005, when he was 15, he was already ranked among the top 50 players in the world. In 2016, at the World Chess Championship in New York, he was on the cusp of becoming world champion before losing to Norway's Magnus Carlsen, considered the world's best player then and now, in a tiebreaker. And for more than 18 years, Karyakin, now 31, held a title no one could match, the world's youngest grandmaster. All right. Keep going. The stain of what had happened in the Sudak tournament, however, has lingered. There were rumors about the event in the chess world, but no one seemed interested in pursuing them. Several participants in the tournament said that Karyakin had not achieved his grandmaster's title by the book, but that for them, it was just a fact of chess life. Wow. Arashenko, a stronger player than Karyakin at the time, and his classmate in chess club, said that his coaches had told him to play a draw with Karyakin to make sure he got the youngest grandmaster title on time. He could not do it honestly, Arashenko said of Karyakin. I played better than him at the time, and it was tough for me to become a grandmaster then. Wow. Okay. So in an interview, Karyakin denied offering payoffs or making side deals. He said it was Malinin who had tried to extort money from his family for simply playing a game that they'd agreed to postpone, not replay. After Karyakin's father refused to pay, Malinin got mad and made up all that mess, he said. My father came to him and told him that he has to go and play with me, Karyakin said of Malinin. In any case, nobody would engage in negotiations with young children. Very fair. I think, like, when you read this article, like, if there's going to be shade thrown, it should be thrown at Karyakin's, like, his father, I guess, or his parents, if anything. But it feels like they're trying to say that Karyakin was directly involved. And I mean, I think Karyakin at the time was only 12 years old. So it's kind of, this sort of rubs me a little bit in the wrong way. Because Karyakin, I highly doubt that he knew exactly what was going on. Let's keep reading. Okay, a visit with Putin. Okay, a visit with Putin. All right, let's keep going. Many chess players say making side deals in chess is essentially harmless, but to others, Karyakin's career has demonstrated that is not the case. Players who fulfill their norms honestly, other players said, would not get their grandmaster's title for years and thus never get the chance to join the top echelon. Furman, for instance, has quit professional chess several times because of his inability to make a living at it. At least one of Karyakin's former peers at the Momat Chess Club now earns money giving Skype lessons. Others compete for small prizes in sweaty halls at low-level tournaments. Karyakin, however, has thrived. In 2009, President Dmitry Medvedev of Russia granted him citizenship. In 2014, Karyakin sided with Russia against his native Ukraine by openly supporting its annexation of Crimea. In Crimea, he posed in a t-shirt bearing the face of Vladimir Putin, of whom he was by then a prominent and vocal supporter. All right. I'm starting to feel like Hassan. In 2016, Putin said that the country has always given high priority to chess, and chess has always helped the country. The chess crown, however, has been away from Russia since 2007, when Vladimir Kramnik lost it to Vishwanathan Anand of India. Karyakin has promised to bring the chess crown back to Russia. He received full support for that effort. Lucrative contracts with Russian corporations have bankrolled Karyakin, including one with a bank that brought him around $300,000. His face appeared on billboards around Moscow, and he was invited to the most popular talk shows, turning into a celebrity. He received a manager and an apartment. Soon he had a country house too, in the most prestigious area outside of Moscow, as well as a Mercedes with a driver. All right, so I'm gonna stop right there for one second. I'm just gonna say, so one thing that I think it has to be noted is that certainly when you look at chess, the perception of chess in the East is much different than it is in the West. So I'll give you another example. So if you look at the great country of Armenia, for example, they have won the Chess Olympics, or the Chess Olympiad. They won it in 2006 and 2008 as well, and maybe even not. They didn't win in 2010, I don't think, but they won 2 Chess Olympiads in a row. And when they won the Chess Olympiad, they were all given, I believe, cars. They were given houses and things of this nature. Now, to compare that, when the United States team, which I was on in 2006 and 2008 in Turin, the events were held in Turin, Italy, and Dresden, Germany. When we finished in 3rd place, I believe what we got for finishing 3rd and getting the bronze medal was, I think it was like a $2,000 bonus for each player. We got like $2,000 bonus for finishing 3rd in the Chess Olympics. So just to put it in perspective, you guys, it definitely is different. I think even when we got the gold medal in Baku, Azerbaijan in 2014, I think it was. We got the gold medal, I believe. And when we got the gold medal, I think the bonus, I don't even remember what it was, but it's something like $5,000 to $10,000. That's it. So yeah, so it's quite different, to put it mildly. So while it sounds really insane in a way, it actually is not sort of that crazy, because in Russia and Armenia and a lot of these countries, chess is valued much more highly than it is in the Western world. So that's what I would say about this. It sounds really amazing, and it is amazing, but it's not crazy insane the way that it's going to sound to Americans or Canadians. So that's what I say. 3 titled Tuesdays is better than the Golden Olympiad. Maybe not, but it's not crazy. Additionally, you guys, also, when Armenia won in 2008, I believe it was, they were all flown back to the country on the president of Armenia's private airplane. So like, it's just much different. It's a whole different world when you look at it, when you look at things. So that's what I would say. Time to change your name to Hikaru Yanan or something. Yeah, exactly. Good one. But I just want to point that out. So like, chess is valued very highly in a lot of parts of the world, but America is not one of them. So that's what I would say. All right. Let's keep going with the article. In 2017, Putin even invited Karyakin to his residence. In his office, Putin's first question was, "You became a grandmaster at 12, didn't you?" "Yes," Karyakin said. "I was the youngest." A worthy successor. Okay, so what a picture. I think this is Mishra playing against Jobava, the legendary streamer who dances a lot, in the game played yesterday in Sochi, Russia. I'm pretty sure this is Mishra, a picture from yesterday. So let's keep going. Okay, Abhimanyu Mishra, at the age of 12 years, 4 months, 25 days, broke the record for youngest grandmaster. Let's keep scrolling. On the last day of June, 18 years after he'd claimed it, Karyakin surrendered the title that had launched his career. His successor as the youngest grandmaster in history, a young boy from New Jersey named Abhimanyu Mishra, broke the record by 2 months, gaining the title at the age of 12 years, 4 months, 25 days. Mishra and his father are hoping the achievement will do for him what it did for Karyakin. Like Karyakin's parents more than 2 decades ago, Mishra's father, Hemant, had a lot at stake in seeing his sons claim the title. He said he spent more than $270,000 on making his son the world's youngest grandmaster, and he had been collecting donations online to make their chess dream come true. Okay. Interesting. That seems again, it's all relative, but that seems like a very, very high number. And I mean, I'm skeptical about the actual number. I will say that. But let's keep going. The small advantages that the money could buy in scheduling and opposition and timing began to add up as he closed in on his final norm. Not high if he. That's a terrible comment. Not so perfect chess. That's a terrible comment. That's a terrible comment, dude. Seriously, that's just not right. Just not right. But I would say, however, if I just think about it from my own experiences, now mind you, times have changed. Of course, everything's much more expensive thanks to inflation, thanks to the Federal Reserve, and a number of other economic factors. You know, if I think about it logically, and I just look at tournaments that I played in, the support was pretty minimal. And I would say that traveling, just if I just had to, I'm just going to ballpark it here and make some assumptions. But if you ballpark the travel and you assume that you're traveling, let's just say even within the United States for a tournament, let's just say the tournaments on average are, let's say 10 days, just to use round numbers. And you have 10 days and then you play like six tournaments in the United States, and let's just say 5 in the United States and 5 internationally. You're probably talking in the US on travel flights. It's going to be, at least for probably Mishra and his father, at least 2 people, going to be, I'm guessing, close to $1,000, and then probably the amount of money you spend additionally, maybe another $1,000. So you're probably going to spend like $10,000 right there in the United States tournaments, and then having to travel abroad and play in tournaments. I'm going to assume that's probably like $3,000 to $4,000 for every 10 days. So you're probably talking like let's say in the US 5 tournaments, 2 times 5, so that's 10 grand, and then you double that to like 20 grand. You're probably talking 30 to 40 grand just in hotels, airfares, food, and not to mention that you're probably not getting prize money in return. So I would say it's probably somewhere like 40 to 50k is if I add up logically, add in lessons as well. I'm just gonna say that's another like 20k. So I would say it's probably like 50 to 70k a year. So 270, I don't really necessarily. I think the number is inflated a little bit, but I will say that it's not cheap, which I think is the ultimate point that needs to be made about it. So it's not cheap, and again, parents they spend this money out of their own pocket. Which is not, it's not easy. It's not easy. And I'll talk about my own story a little bit later on, but let's get through the article. Mishra, who described Karyakin as his idol, at least he described Karyakin as idol and not Nepo. That would have been the real popcorn if he had said his idol was Nepo. Mishra, who described Karyakin as his idol, played in 5 so-called norm tournaments in Charlotte, North Carolina in the fall of 2020 and spring of 2021. But did not achieve a single norm. With a deadline to beat Karyakin's record bearing down, he and his father next traveled to Budapest, where Abhimanyu Mishra played 8 tournaments in a row. At these tournaments, norm seekers paid the organizers, who in turn paid grandmasters to show up, a legal and common arrangement in professional chess. But the quality was not the same. The average rating of Mishra's opponent in the Budapest event was nearly 50 points lower than it had been in Charlotte. So I would also add a second thing. So that this notion of going to Budapest, going to Hungary, and playing in tournaments is not new. A previous player from the United States actually did this many years ago. His name, as everybody surely has heard of, was Fabiano Caruana. So at the age of, I think maybe it was 11 years old, I want to say, or maybe a little bit, maybe it was like 12. Fabiano's parents left the United States, and they actually went and lived in Hungary for many years. Now, this has nothing to do with the title, but what I'm saying is they left the United States, they went to Hungary, and they lived in Europe for many, many years. Fabiano came back, I think, 2013, 2014. But there is precedent that, like, you want to go where there are more opportunities, and going to Europe to play in all these events, it makes a lot of sense. So it's very, very logical. So let's keep going. In an interview, Arkady Dvorkovich, the president of FIDE, said that there is little sportsmanship at such tournaments. That is partly because the grandmasters, often aging players long past their prime, often lack the motivation to work hard to beat their opponents. The motivation was quite low for me, said Wojtek Plot, one of the grandmasters who played. Also true. At the Budapest tournaments, Mishra had the added advantage of playing against the same group of grandmasters again and again, which allowed him to learn their tactics and styles. Gabor Nagy, a Hungarian grandmaster, played against Mishra in 6 of the tournaments in Budapest. In Charlotte, no grandmaster played in more than 3 tournaments. In one match, they agreed on a draw after 13 moves, and in another after only 6. To chess experts, this was an indication that the matches were not seriously contested, but in playing them, Mishra accumulated a precious half point towards his goal in a matter of minutes. Actually, I'll stop there for a second because people are asking questions. They're saying, why do they play if they have no motivation? Because chess is a very poor sport. You don't. It's very hard to make money, and if you're past your prime, let's just think about. Let's just go back a step. Think about it. If you're in your prime, let's just use. This is not to single out Hans, but just as an example because he's in the right rating range. Hans's rating is about 2600 to 2650. Whatever it is doesn't matter. Let's use 2600 to use a round number. Let's say that Han goes around playing tournaments for the next 20 years and assume that he doesn't gain any more rating points. Okay, we're just going to use that as an example. It's nothing against Hans, but since he's in that right rating range, assume that Hans goes and plays a bunch of tournaments for the next 20 years. His rating doesn't go up. He'll be able to play tournaments. He'll be able to make money and he'll make a living. But at the end of the day, when Hans is, let's just say 40 years old, if his rating hasn't gone up, he won't really be competitive anymore. And the problem is then, how do you make a living through chess? And the way that you make a living is then you have to play in these tournaments where being a grandmaster means you'll be invited and you'll be paid, specifically norm tournaments. And so that's the thing is there's no it's not a cushy profession. You don't make a great living. And if you're say 25, 50, 2600, after 20 years, it's like, how do you make a living? You have to go play in these tournaments where other players are trying to make norms. And so of course there's no motivation whatsoever. So I'm not clipping and shipping. It's not about Hans. It's just in general about that rating range because he's someone who's at that 2600 range. Or if you're 25 to 2600, what's your career? You've made some money, but you aren't you're not set for life. There's no retirement plan. None of these things are laid out. And yes, you can coach as well. But again, in Europe, it's definitely harder to make a living as a coach for sure. So that's what I would say. And that's the reason they don't have motivation, because the point is you just need to, they need to make money to live. And so the point is you get paid to play, and then you don't really care what the result is because you always have the title of grandmaster. So you'll always have this chance to play in these tournaments and get some money. So that's what I would say. Playing in tournaments can be a side job. Well, like I said, Hans is obviously different. But I'm talking about people who are 35, 40 years old and they're 25, 50, 2600. How do they make a living? If they're not in America, especially, it's very, very difficult. So that's what I would say. All right, let's keep going. In another tournament, Mishra played 3 games in a day. His father said, FIDE rules, which seek to protect players from overexertion in the grueling sport, set a limit of 2 games a day. By the time Mishra had usurped Karyakin's throne, he'd played 70 games of chess in only 78 days. Now, the thing that doesn't make sense about this is that I don't think I've ever played a tournament that had classical time controls where you could play more than 2 games a day. So I'm actually kind of confused how that's allowed. That actually seems very weird. It's not about Mishra, but I don't understand how you can have 3 games that are rated. How can you play 3 games of classical chess in one day? 2 games you can easily play. 9 a.m., 3 p.m., 9 p.m. I've never played 3 games in a day. I played game 30 where you play games go 1 hour. I played 4 or 5 games, but I've never played slow game. Never in my entire life have I played 3 games of slow chess in one day. That's very weird. Very, very weird. Okay. And for example, so they say he played 70 games of chess in 78 days. Now, I think I've told this story before, but I think it was 1997. It was a 97-98 year of chess. And in that year, I actually played the second most games of chess in all of the United States. I believe I played something I want to say I played something 900 games or not 950 games in 365 days. But these games that were played, they were game 30. So the games only went 1 hour. So I played 4 games of chess every day. So these were very quick games, and mind you, that wasn't even close to being first, by the way. So to see this 70 games of chess in 78 days is definitely kind of surprising, but it is what it is. Let's keep going. Okay, it begins to smell. Bruce Pandolfini, an accomplished American coach, said of the effort to chase the youngest grandmaster title using those methods. Still, Mishra's rise to grandmaster will mark the start of a new life for him. He was recently featured on the websites of ESPN and People magazine and was invited to the upcoming Chess World Cup, one of the most prestigious tournaments in the sport, with a purse of nearly $1.9 million. And he did play there. He did lose in the first round though to Badur Jobaba. All right. Himant Mishra said his son achieved the title legitimately, and that suggesting otherwise would be utter nonsense. But top players, we know, actually, it's not top players. It's but a top player, quote unquote, is publicly questioning Mishra's title and criticizing the system that helped him get it. It's not top players. It's a top player. Short, a grandmaster himself and the FIDE vice president, said that he had attempted to reform the system, but the fact that so many players had already acquired questionable grandmaster titles made it all but impossible. The horse has bolted. You cannot close the stable doors, he said. The best thing to do is to abolish the title altogether. Okay, that's a little bit insane. Anyway, okay, here's another picture. Okay, that's the end of the article. Yeah, so what to say in general? I mean, the things that I would say first and foremost are that obviously Mishra achieved the title totally legitimately, without a doubt. I don't think there's anyone who's really said that he has, and I think if people try to imply that, then I think they're kind of insane. I think that to me, it's pretty clear he achieved the title legitimately. Are there problems with the system? Almost certainly there are, but I don't think that's something that you should take out. It felt like the problem with the whole Nepo situation is that it felt like he basically took it out on Mishra when Mishra became the youngest grandmaster. That's the problem with it. What I would say though is, like, until you have a more sort of unified system or there's more money in chess, I don't really know how you can prevent any of this. That's what I would say. I don't know how you can prevent I don't believe in getting rid of the title. I think it's a very special title. And that's all I have to say about Nigel's comment. I think Nigel is probably being flippant as usual, and he's trying to be humorous. But to me, I don't think there's any solution. If I think about a solution, the only way you can have a solution, but if this is the system doesn't undermine Mishra's achievement, I think Mishra has shown that he's capable of beating strong grandmasters. So to me, I don't see any issue with him getting the title the way that he did objectively. But I think that the only way you have it is if you have something where it's a unified system, and FIDE has to, they have to approve every single event, and you have officials at every event. But again, in order to do that, you have to literally be sending people to events all around the world, places like Hungary, places like Italy, Spain, Russia, Ukraine, everywhere around the world. And that costs a lot of money, first of all. And so I don't know how you can do it. It's too much money. It's just too much money. And chess is not $1 billion industry, at least not yet. So I just think it's impractical to try and change things in that sort of method. It is to me, it's more or less, it is what it is, and you can maybe make some rules, you have to have maybe a higher performance rating, or you can't play in a norm tournament with anybody below, say, 2400. But again, I would say that objectively, I think I don't think there's a quick fix, and I think it's kind of how things are. Unless there's a lot more money in the game of chess, I don't think you can change it. Top players should break away and form their own organization. That already happened. Garry Kasparov tried to do that many years ago, and it didn't work out very well. So yeah, it's a problem within the world of chess, certainly. But again, I think it's what it is. Super League, yeah, exactly. Someone says, am I a bit afraid of these new young super chess players that one day you may soon stand in their shadow? Well, the fact is you only have so much time that you're going to be relevant no matter what. Magnus might be the world champion now, but in 40 years, Magnus is not going to be world champion. He's going to be a has-been, just like everybody else. It's just a matter of time. So no, I'm not worried about that. So what else? What else is there? Any other questions, you guys? Have online norm tournaments? I don't know. But that's what I would say. No, it's not shots fired. When Magnus is 70, he won't be world champion. Plain and simple. That's not shots fired. You only have so much time. So we're all going to be in the shadow at some point, regardless. That's inevitable. That's just inevitable. That's just that's the annoying thing called Father Time. Father Time is undefeated. So what else is there? Any other questions? It doesn't look like there are any other good questions. Okay. All right, you guys. Oh, you guys want to ask me about my story. So yeah, so I'll talk about my story a little bit as well. So for me, it wasn't too different. I mean, I was lucky from the standpoint that when I was very young, I had the opportunity to play in a lot of these Game 30 tournaments at the Marshall Chess Club and the Manhattan Chess Club in New York City. That really helped a lot because, again, going into the city every night with my stepfather, he would drive me in, 8 p.m., 7 p.m. rather, 7 p.m., 8 p.m., play like 4 games, get back at midnight to home, sleep, and repeat this over and over. Of course, it wasn't easy. And then later on, he would spend a lot of money flying my mom and my mom and myself to various tournaments throughout Europe. So it was never cheap. And I think, that's the story for a lot of junior players. They if they're in the United States, a lot of them end up going elsewhere and trying to get the norms like in Hungary or playing in Europe in general. I think things have gotten better in the US. You have norm tournaments like in Charlotte. You used to have norm tournaments in Chicago, which already is a step in the right direction. Because as I said before, growing up, I didn't have that. Like it literally was non-existent for me. So norm tournaments did not exist in the US, and I had to go abroad. And I even remember when I was much younger, probably like 1995, I think it was. My stepfather had the opportunity to play in a norm tournament at I believe it was the Manhattan Chess Club, if I'm not mistaken. And he was a FIDE master at the time, and he played an international master norm tournament. And as I recall, like that was very special because those events just did not happen at all in the U.S. So it was very rare, and things have gotten better, but still there are more opportunities outside of the United States for sure. So that's what I would say. Um, that's what I would say. My stepdad is the MVP. I think parents are the MVP. Period. For any of these young players who've gone on to become great chess players, parents are the MVPs. Um, Without a doubt. How did I study for school? Because you were always traveling. I was homeschooled. So that's how. But I think in general, when you look at it, that's all. This is always going to be the theme. That's just going to be the theme, no matter what. No matter how you look at it. All right. So I think on that note, we're gonna move along. We're gonna move along to some other stuff. Do Unless there are a couple more questions. Actually, I'll keep it AMA for just a little bit longer. Um, do I think Mishra's record will be beaten by Tani? Very hard to judge. I think when I look at Tani, it's very hard to judge what his progress is. But if he has the opportunities to play in all these tournaments, I think it could happen. I would say, however, that much like with Mishra, it's hard for me to see a path for Tani just playing in the United States and getting there. So maybe it can happen, but it's very hard for me to see because the only places that have norm tournaments in the U.S. right now are St. Louis and Charlotte. Those are the only two places right now that really have norm tournaments. So it's hard to tell what'll happen. Um, Whoa, thank you so much. Hype train, okay. Um, Super GM title for 2700, maybe. I don't know. I don't know. It seems like Misha's parents pushed him really hard. They certainly did. I would say that's actually a difference. Is that's one thing that I've noticed that I think is very different between both Magnus and myself versus a lot of these other prodigies. Is we've had parents, I mean specifically like Magnus's father and my stepfather, who definitely pushed us. To improve and be very serious about chess, but it wasn't over the top in the way that I felt like in a lot of other cases. It's been like, you must do this, you have to do this, and I feel like that's one of the big differences in some ways. Is that Magnus obviously was very into chess. His parents helped him a lot. Um, but I've never really gotten the sense that his father Henrik, like it was like, you must do this, like, put your hand down, you have to do this. And I would say that for me, it was much the same. Like my stepfather, obviously, he wanted me to be a great chess player, and he tried to help me out as best he could. But it was never like, if one day I chose to stop playing chess, he'd be like, I'd be like, oh man, like, that's the end of the world. He wouldn't disown me or anything. Um, so I do think that there is something to be said about that. To be fair, so that's one thing that I think is worth noting, is that like I do feel that in both like in both my case and in Magnus's case, it definitely came from within a lot. A lot of it was like we had parents who helped us, but it was from within. So that's specifically what I would say. They spent a lot on coaches, sure, but like again, like I don't think that if Magnus had not gone on to become world champion, it would be the end of the world either. So that's what I would say. I think, but at the end of the day, you really do need parents who are very supportive as well. Because I can give you another example of someone who went on to become probably the most promising junior player from France, at least until Maxime. Someone who was widely considered to potentially be a world champion, and his name was Etienne Bacro, and he was on a path. He was like 2,700, I think, when he was like maybe 16 or 17, maybe a little bit older, but he was considered to be a world championship contender. And at a certain point, because of the sort of the dynamics of what was going on, he sort of cracked. And Etienne's a very strong player, very nice guy, but he never came close to becoming the world champion. There are other people like Gata Kamsky as well. Many other, maybe it wasn't 17, but he was very, very strong. And there were other players as well where similar things happened. At any rate, so that's just the isn't Fresnay better than Bacro? Now he is, but Bacro was far more talented. Bacro was one of the most talented juniors I think I've ever seen, at least in my lifetime. So that's what I would say. Anyway, all right, you guys. I think we're gonna keep going on. What else are we gonna keep moving along with? I think we're gonna let me see what we're doing next. 1 second. Do a Reddit AMA. I could do that. How can chess players afford traveling to other countries in the early days to play a tournament? Your parents spend their money. That's what they do. Your parents spend their money. What happens is your parents basically, like my stepfather, he's obviously, it's chess has definitely gotten better and better over the years with teaching and so forth, but he would basically spend, the money he had so that my mom and I could fly to a tournament. That's all there is to it. And it's funny because now things are different, but in many ways, like when I look back on those sorts of events, they were a lot of fun. There was a lot of fun, like going and playing a tournament like in Linares or something, and then like going to like the little, the cheap Chinese restaurant down the road and eating there every night. Like that's what happens. Like there's no glamour to it whatsoever. My stepfather did travel with me to some tournaments, but the thing was, my mom wasn't working at the time, and the way that he supported it was by teaching chess. So in many cases, he had to teach chess while the money that he was making was used for my mom and I to go and travel to tournaments. What about sponsors? There very rarely are sponsors. It's gotten better in chess, but there very rarely are sponsors who sponsor chess players. Like it's funny because I think a lot of people also they when I was up and coming, I was like 18, 19 years old. I was about 2,700 level. I had no sponsors at the time, just no sponsors. And that's with me being, I think I was already like the number one or number two player in America, and there were no sponsors, just no sponsors whatsoever for chess. And it's unfortunate. Even now, it hasn't really improved that much. So yeah, it's what it is. So that's what I would say in general terms. In general terms about it. Did most top players get support from their parents? I think it depends on the system, but in a lot of cases, it's true. I wasn't on ESPN People magazine. I think for Grandmaster, I don't think I got that much coverage for Grandmaster. When I became the youngest master at 10 years old and 30 days or something at the time, whatever it was, I was on Regis and Kathy Lee. But again, that doesn't translate into sponsors in any way, shape, or form. So like that's the thing. Like it doesn't automatically translate into financial rewards. So that's what I'd say. I also know like Vichy, for example. That's true. Someone says Vichy traveled alone. Yeah, I think like some of these players, like they traveled alone as well. It's like you travel with a team, and it's just you're kind of on your own. It's pretty crazy. So that's what I would say. All right.